were all of Janet's stories were submitted to CafeLit first of all, then we put them together in a book. They're sort of interconnected stories, but more or less managed on their own as well. And I'll just mention that we've done 3 other books like that. We've got one of the other authors in the room, Dawn. And if you look at Dawn's background, she's got the cover of her second serial as a background. And we've got another one, The Gin by Mason Bush. They've all got this sort of almost more or less standalone stories, but they interconnect. So I'm going to start off by talking to Janet. Got a little interview prepared. So Janet, you used to be a drama teacher. So has that influenced you a lot in the writing of the book?
Not really, because I think right from a child, I mean, didn't actually base on script writing, it's based on poetry. So when I was younger, I always remember writing poetry, always, up until the secondary school, when your whole concept of poetry alters because you've got to analyse every word and every sentence. So I didn't really write much from then until I started to teach. And then when I started to teach, I suppose in a way it did actually affect it, because I started to write scripts for productions. And I remember my very first one was called the pantomime play, which was basically all pantomime characters taken out from different pantomimes into one play. So in that way, I suppose it did affect. And funny enough, when I was thinking about some storyline for this one, as opposed to my last one, I put down in a list of all the things I could do a story on about teaching, and all the ones I could do about drama and amateur drama. And I decided in the end to go down the drama way. Otherwise, it might have been something else, scholastic episodes as opposed to dramatic episodes, maybe. But yeah.
So, going on to those scripts that you wrote, would you say that you've got a favourite one that worked really well with your students?
Well, actually, I think it was probably the pantomime play. I remember writing one called Mel, which was about a singular character, and something else that was based on sort of a Dracula theme. But after a while, because I had my children and went back, and by the time I went back, I think schools were far more into the big musicals. So then I went in, I directed things like Grease and The Wizard of Oz and Bugsy Malone more than once, because I was in various schools. So then I didn't script them, because there's no way I could have written a musical. Well, I'm saying that, I've never tried, but I haven't got that sort of talent. I'd have to have somebody do the musical script. But yes, from then onwards, it was just already scripted performances. But yes, the pantomime play, I enjoyed that. I've still got the pictures from it, sadly, in a book. Yeah.
Did you have singing and dancing?
Yeah.
Sorry. Did you have singing and dancing in your pantomime?
I'm sorry, Jill.
Did you have singing and dancing?
The singing and dancing, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, oh yeah, I love it all. But it's if somebody would say to me, would you like to go to a musical, or would you like to go to a drama? With the nitty gritty, it would always be the drama. I mean, always. It would not. I do love. There's loads of musicals I do love. I mean, Oliver being the absolute archetype, beautiful, Evita, things like that. There's a lot of musicals I don't love, but dramas, I would always go and see drama, always.
Yeah. By the way, everyone, if you have questions for Janet, you can pop them into the chat, and then we can go through them a little bit later on. If anything occurs to you, just pop it down into the chat. So do you see any parallels between teaching and writing?
I suppose so, yes. I think teaching made me a more organised person, and I got very, very much, in fact, the very first story I sent to you was marking time, wasn't it, when I used to get up very early in the morning to mark books, and I've never got out of that, and that has actually helped me in writing, because now instead of marking books, I'm writing books. And I read a lot, because I'm in 3 book clubs, so I read. I like all writers, I think if you ask any writer, they're all going to say, I read prolifically. I love books and always have done, and I do. So yes, I think in that sense, because of that, because I had to organise, because teaching is horrendously routine. It has to be. You know, lessons are at a certain time, your breaks are at a certain time, your holidays are at certain times, and you have to mark the books, and they have to be, you know, in, because I taught English for a long time before I just taught drama. So yeah, I think that teaching does help you in that way. And also it makes you understand. I mean, there's a couple of characters in Charitable Thoughts, my first book, that were very much based on teenagers that I had taught. And even in dramatic, God, I can't even remember the name of my own book now. Dramatic episodes. Even in dramatic episodes, some of the characters, the younger ones, I always do base them on kids I knew. And I miss young people. That's what I miss about teaching, is being with young people. And I like young people. But yeah, so it has done that.
Yeah, so you moved from writing scripts through poetry into writing fiction.
Yeah.
As somebody who's trying to go the other way, I'm trying to move from writing fiction into writing scripts.
Right.
Everybody now, I sent 15 pages of script to the Octagon Theatre yesterday.
Right, wow.
Do you see any parallels in the storytelling between fiction and writing plays?
I think writing plays is so much more restricting, because basically you're restricted to the set, because nobody wants too many scene changes. You're restricted to the amount of characters you have in there, because nobody wants to pay loads of actors and actresses. You have the visual, which is nice, and you don't have to think about, I mean, if you've got an accent, as long as you've put that at the beginning of the script, you don't therefore have to try and write, as we all know, which is so hard to try and write in a dialect or an accent in that way. Clothing, you can actually see it, so you don't really have to worry about that. But you're restricted. So you're restricted in length, horrendously so. I mean, something that struck me the other day, for one of my book clubs, we read The Constant Gardener, John le Carrier, and I plodded through this. And he's a good writer, but I'm not a lover of spy novels. So we found it on Amazon and watched it. And what was really amusing was the amount of characters that were chopped out. But then I tried very hard to put Charitable Thoughts into a play and gave up. Not a good idea. I think trying to make a book into a play is far harder than starting off with it just writing a play. So now I have full sympathy. So now when I go and see films and I go, oh, it's not as good as the book, I now have sympathy, because it's so hard. I mean, I'm doing at the moment a radio script writing course online. And that again, you see, is you're restricted in a sense. Well, no, you are in some ways and you're not. But I mean, obviously in a radio play, you can't see them. And this business about the imagination has to work harder when you're listening to a radio play, because in a book I can write about what somebody's thinking, I can do loads of descriptions about the scenery and everything else, and I can go wherever I want. But in a script, you can't do that. So I find it far, far more restricting. And the reason, one of the reasons I went on to writing stories was because the first thing I did was I joined a writing group. And everybody, when you said about scripts, they went, oh, there might be one other person here that does a script, and poetry, there was no one. So in a sense, I went into story writing because I thought there's just nobody's doing this, isn't it? It doesn't seem to be any access, and everybody kept on saying, oh, it's so hard getting poetry published, it's so hard getting scripts published, etc. But I haven't let up on scripts. I really haven't. And as I say, I'm trying desperately. When this is all finished, I'm going to carry on with writing a script that I'm doing at the moment. But I would say writing a book is, in a sense, perhaps, I don't know, I'm not going to use the word easier. It just gives you more scope.
Yeah, I guess they're all just slightly different things, really. So do you call yourself a writer, and do other people recognise you as such? Family, friends, fans, followers?
I don't think so. You'd probably have to ask them, but I don't think so. It'd be lovely. I mean, I know there's a few sitting in here now on this screen that I would definitely call writers. I haven't been in it as long as they have. I'm nowhere as good as they are, and also they produce a lot more than I do, I think. I try and write every day, but it's not like I don't know, say Dawn. I'm sure she won't be minding mentioning Dawn, who puts a lot more time into it than I do. I think she's brilliant like that, but she's been very helpful to me. But no, I don't think my friends look at me as a writer. They probably just think of me as Janet, really.
That's fine, isn't it? So tell us about some of the is some of your poetry published?
No, never ever. I've never submitted poetry anyway. No, only I mean, I've got, as you know, I've got 2 novels, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, sorry, anthologies that I'm in that have all been published, but no, not poetry.
So tell us a little bit about your novels. Don't give us any spoilers.
Oh, which one? My other novel, My Charitable Thoughts, or do you want me to just talk about dramatic episodes?
Well, about both, really.
Oh, okay. All right, then. I've got it here.
Any secrets?
That was just very briefly. That was based on an incident I had in a charity shop, where I went in and I picked something off a shelf and I put it on the counter, and it was a really cold day. Took my gloves off and went down for my purse to find her wrapping my gloves up rather than the actual thing I'd chosen. And we laughed about this, myself and the lady behind the counter. And I thought, there's got to be so many funny stories. And so I researched loads and loads of charity shops and ended up with this story. What's been quite nice, and I am tempted to do it, is a lot of people really want to know about Brenda, what happened to Brenda afterwards. In fact, one friend of mine actually was quite upset that I'd written dramatic episodes over and above writing more about Brenda. So that might, happen in the future. But I so enjoyed writing that.
So do you miss your characters when you finish the story? Do you miss them?
What, miss the actual characters?
Yeah.
I do, the main one, yes. I got quite fond of Brenda in the end, because people kept just saying, well, is that you? I went, no, Brenda's nothing like me, but she is like some people I know. She's a combination of people. But some of the characters in it, one of the characters is literally my husband, but a bit different, somebody else is, although he doesn't know it, is one of the characters in one of the writing groups that I'm in, although he doesn't know it, but things like that. But yes, I do miss, so I may revisit in that sense, and because I so enjoyed doing it. Whereas with dramatic episodes, as you said right at the beginning, that was episodic. I sent them to you in episodes, so there was gaps, and in between the gaps I did other things, and then there was another one went up, and then it were all put together into one story. So I let it go a bit, and then I pulled it back in again. But I thoroughly enjoy dramatic episodes. I mean, I've got it now for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. But that was very much based on all my experiences when I was in Amdram for years, more than my drama teaching. It was more about that. And there are a lot of characters. I mean, as I put that, you know, all similarities were absolutely meant to be, really, were absolutely intentional, because they know about it. I asked them. Some are just hints of them, but there's about 2 or 3 or 4 people that is definitely them. I'm even in there. One of them, I am in there. My name is myself. My name is.
When you wrote the dramatic episodes and you sent them to me, were they written already, or did you write them as you went along?
Oh no, I wrote them. No, nothing was written already. Nothing. Right. No. I started right from scratch. I worked on the characters to start with. So, I mean, the preparation basic was doing a character analysis of each one of them and their ages. Their ages is important. Their ages, their jobs, what they look like, their friendships, you know, were they married, were they not, you know, did they have children, whatever. I did all these analysis, and then slowly. So the first book is all about when all 13 of them, they're all involved in doing Midsummer Night's Dream. And it starts, you know, with a rehearsal, and it ends with a rehearsal, but all the in between is their own dramas that are far more dramatic. Their own real lives are far more dramatic than the actual play. And the second book, which I hope will get finished, is when they're doing a murder mystery evening that one of the group actually write. And so again, it's the casting, then it's all the drama that goes on behind, and culminating in the final performance. Yeah.
Yep, as you've just mentioned that, would this be a good time to throw out your challenge to everyone?
Oh yeah, I've got a challenge, folks. Sorry.
Challenge,
of which you receive a free book, which can be whatever book you want. It can be dramatic episodes, it can be charitable thoughts, or it could be any of these. I mean, it happened in Essex. I'd like to just push, because all contributions, all sales of this book go to the Basildon Hospital Radio. So, you know, you could, you know, I don't mind buying one of those for you, because that's, you know, is a good cause. The others are all different anthologies that I've been in, and you're welcome to any of those. But yes, the challenge is, this book is called Dramatic Episodes, okay? I want somebody to give me a really good title to a follow-up book. And the best one gets the free book. And you've got a week to do that in. So any ideas that you have, but as I say, don't go down the Jurassic Park, but not the Dramatic Episodes Part 2 or anything like that, but any other ideas, okay? So that's my little challenge.
Yeah, and I will email that out to everyone.
Thank you.
After we've finished, and I'll let you have Janet's email, but you can email the response to me if you like, and I'll send it on to Janet. Right, I've got just one more question before we have a reading, and that is, you mentioned that when you were a teacher, you used to get up early and start your marking early. You said that you write every day. You've also said you don't really think of yourself, you don't call yourself a writer, but could you tell us a little bit more about your writing routine?
Okay, yeah. It's not the same every day. I mean, actually, it's a great relief when you read writing magazines like the writing magazine or Dyslexia or any of them. There and other people say the same. Sometimes they do nothing, and you think, oh, thank goodness for that. Or some people even, I mean, it's one really famous writer, and I can't remember who it is, who actually only ever writes 10 minutes a day. You know, but and yeah. So in the morning. Yes, it might just be half an hour or something, but I try, especially during the COVID, to then do some after lunch, and that can be an hour, a couple of hours. If I'm really getting to the end of something, or I really want to finish something, I'll do it in the evening, but I don't often write in the evening for whatever reason. It's not that I'm tired. It's just not into my routine. But so it tends to be morning, early afternoon, and then night if possible. But of course, as you and I and everybody else that writes knows, a lot of that is editing it, and then you edit it again and you edit it again, and it doesn't matter how often it's edited, there'll still be a mistake. In fact, I spotted one in dramatic episodes which I missed completely before, but it happens. And that's with me editing it, somebody else editing it, you editing it. It drives you mad. And also all things like I'm trying to learn now, I'm not very good at, is marketing the book. And I've got so much to learn about that. You know, this business about Facebook, or I know some people have blogs and pages and that. I have still got to learn all that. I'm very naive. I'm not very good with IT, as you know yourself, Jill. I am not very.
Oh, yeah.
Very good. It takes me a long time to learn these things. I have to do them loads and loads of times before it sticks in my brain. So a lot of time is spent up. And then, of course, research. When you're researching and all the preliminaries to a novel you have to do. So that's all counted in writing time in a way, isn't it? Yeah. And
which do you enjoy most, the writing, the editing, or the research?
Oh, the writing, always the writing. The research for the charity shop, though, was great, because I was trouncing around and some of these stories were absolutely incredible. If anybody has read it, you'd think, nah, that couldn't have happened, but it did. And I got permission to use it, but, you know, turning it around, they say, oh, no, go on. It's up to you what you use, you know. I really did enjoy that. But I know people who, I've got a friend who writes just historical reference books, and he spends 2 years literally researching. That would not be me. No, I'd desperately be wanting to write, but because it's history, he has so much research. And I'm not just saying that's pure research, he's making notes and goodness knows what else. That wouldn't be me. I love the actual writing of it. I find editing's a task, but it's a task to be done. And I suppose some people enjoy editing more than they do writing. I don't know.
At the risk of putting you off a little bit for what you're about to do next, I'd like to mention that I often find when I go to read my work out at an event like this, I think, oh, I don't like that. And I read something different.
Oh, I've done that, yes.
I think it's also partly because what works out loud,
yes,
isn't the same as what works on the page.
Yes.
When I had another writing friend visit my students at the university, she was halfway down the first page of her novel, and she suddenly stopped reading, and she looked up and said, you know, she said, I always tell my students not to do that. You've done this in this sentence, she said, so I'm going to read it differently from the way it's written. So I think that's where you can forgive yourself for if you you spot a mistake in a book that's been proofread 3 times and edited, goodness knows how many times, you know,
Oh, I know.
happens, and you can always correct it as you read it out.
Yes.
So, are you going to?
I will. Shall I just read the first chapter? Is that allowed?
Like, yeah.
I'll read the first chapter. Yes, of dramatic episodes. Right. Okay. We're off. Okay. Not too long. Right. Episode 1. Shirley. Shirley's key in the heavy fire door sounded loud in the quiet of the evening. She pushed it open, and to stop it from shutting, she leant her body against it as she manoeuvred herself and her shopping bag through the gap. She let the door clang shut, the noise adding to the headache that had started earlier on during the quarrel. She must try to forget about it. There was work to be done. The first night was looming, and there were so few rehearsals left. Turning the lights on in the main hall, Shirley was yet again aware of how cold it always was. She wondered if church halls were kept cold deliberately to keep the Sunday congregations awake, or as a penance for sins accumulated throughout the week. She smiled to herself as she took off her coat and hung it on the back of a chair with her shopping bag. She pulled a stacking table over to the centre of the hall and placed a chair behind it. She then pulled out her prompt copy of Midsummer Night's Dream, her director's notebook, pen, pencil, reading glasses, and her mobile phone from the bag. She knew there was a message on the phone, and she knew who it was from, but she would not look at it until the end of the rehearsal. He'd upset her enough for one evening. His lies, his promises, his skill at persuading her he was sorry. Well, she'd had enough. She pulled her auburn hair back off her face and secured it in a ponytail with a bobble. She'd never really altered her hairstyle from her days as a hippie. Then it was always loose. She used to tie ribbons and flowers in it, carry bells, and walk barefooted and free. That seemed like 100 years ago. It was her birthday today. He'd forgotten, of course. She hadn't expected him to remember, but it still hurt. 65 and recently retired from a job in the head offices of the charity Oxfam, with 2 grown-up girls, Carrie and Lucy, and 2 grandchildren, she felt anything but free. She didn't know why she'd volunteered to look after Carrie's 2-year-old from Monday to Friday. It exhausted her. She loved the little boy, but he was so energetic and never seemed to need any rest. Perhaps she'd have a word with Carrie and see if someone else could look after him at least one day out of 5. "Hello?" a voice rang out, followed by the door slamming. "Anyone here?" The sound of heels on the bare wood floor got closer to the hall. "In here," Shirley shouted. In bustled the willowy frame of Stacey, wearing a black city suit over a crisp white blouse. The heels on her shoes looked dangerous to Shirley, who preferred kitten heels. Her red hair reached her shoulders and her lipstick was a gash of scarlet. She looked nothing like her role of Titania, a part she so wanted, and Shirley knew she was shining. "Am I early?" "Worked late, then went for a quick drink with a mate. I came straight here off the train. No point in going home first. I was starving, so picked up a biryani from that Indian takeaway on the corner near the station. Any plates and cutlery around here, do you think?" There should be something in the kitchen if they hadn't locked everything away. They had a break-in last year, so they're very vigilant now. The smell of the biryani seemed to fill the dusty church hall. Shirley's stomach lurched. Her IBS was playing up again, and she hadn't managed any dinner. That, plus the argument with Jamie, the accusations, the assumptions, the denials. Stacey put down a biryani and took off a coat, hanging it next to Shirley's. "Be back in a mo." She started towards the hall door. "Oh, I saw Jean and Lauren arriving. Tasty motor Lauren's got. She must be earning a fortune. Heard she's just bought another property as well. Not that I'm jealous." Laughing, Stacey disappeared, and Shirley heard the click of her heels on the steps down to the kitchen. What she would give to be 23 again and free of all the commitments and complications in her life. Free of Jamie. However, she'd probably make the same mistakes again. Voices in the passageway and the fire door slamming announced the arrival of Jean and Lauren. Their conversation continued until they reached the hall. They were both muffled up in thick coats, scarves and woolly bobble hats. Jean was short and stocky, with dark hair cropped close to her head. At 32, she looked older than her years. She wore no makeup. Lauren, in contrast, was tall and athletic. Her fair, curly hair was tucked behind her ears. She had the healthy complexion of one who worked out regularly. Shirley knew she was in her mid-30s, but she looked no older than 25. Hi, Shirley. Traffic is awful out there. There have been some sort of water mains burst and part of the A12 is flooded, so everyone's trying to bypass it by coming off at the crossroads near the big garage. A nightmare. And there are no parking spaces, added Jean. We had to do a bit of creative parking. Hope we don't get a ticket, but I doubt there'll be any traffic wardens around at this time of night. Where are we starting from tonight, Shirley? I'm still a bit wobbly with Hippolyta's words in the last scene. Otherwise, I think I can do it without my script. Oh, you creep. I bet you're the only member of the cast who can, said Lauren. She looked around as the door slammed and more voices were heard. That sounds like Nina, Jess and Val. Hopefully we'll have a full cast today. That'll make a change. The three women entered the hall, still talking. Nina was dressed in a combat jacket with jeans and walking boots. Her long hair was plaited. She was in her 40s. Well, she shouldn't have cast her in that role in the first place, Val. She was embarrassing. Well, who else would have played it, though, with the choice she had? What do you think, Shirley? Val asked as she took off her black raincoat and hung it with the others on the back of the chairs. She took out a cosmetic purse and applied a coat of lipstick. She had the smart appearance of a city worker with styled hair, expensive shoes and a designer handbag. She was still quite a catch in her late 40s. Val ignored the fact that Shirley hadn't answered a question and carried on. I'll just pop out for a quick fag before we begin. She picked up her bag and exited the hall, nearly bumping into Stacey, who was returning with the cutlery. Hi, Stacey. Is that your curry I can smell? I don't know what's worse, curry or the fish and chips you brought in last week. See you in a minute. Sorry, girls. I don't suppose anyone has any bottled water. I can't eat a curry without water. I've got a bottle, Stacey. Jess fumbled around in her copious bag until she found a small bottle. She smiled at Stacey. Jess was a naturally kind woman in her 30s, always pleasant, always ready to help. She was wearing a loose blouse over elasticated waisted jeans. She'd struggled with her weight all her life, but now had resigned herself to the shape she was. She had a pretty, almost childlike face. She never wanted to be cast in a big part, was happy with her 2 small roles as a fairy and snug and mechanical. You are a star. I owe you one. Stacey got on with eating a biryani. Are we starting from the beginning today? Shirley jerked out of her thoughts of Jamie and the row. Yes, we are. All scripts down. I'd like to get to the end, but at least the end of the first act. The various responses of horror at the prospect of abandoning their scripts was stopped by the bang of the fire door and the high-pitched laughter of 2 female voices. Oh, that sounds like Debbie and Annie. Good, we're nearly all here. Stacey, can you get rid of your plate, etc. before we start? Shirley was now feeling queasy with the smell and the emptiness of her stomach. No problem. Hi, Debs. Hi, Annie. Are you going to share the joke with us all? Both girls collapsed in giggles again. They were wearing short black leather jackets, little black numbers and high heels. Both had small handbags that matched their shoes and full makeup plus false eyelashes. Debbie had blonde short hair reminiscent of Marilyn Monroe and piercing blue eyes, whereas Annie had long black hair and dark eyes. They were both in their late 30s but could pass for 20s. Couldn't do that, Stace. Shirley would show us out for obscenities. Annie leant in towards Stacey. Tell you in the tea break. Sorry we're a bit late. Couldn't find a handbag and shoes to match. Debbie had to lend me a bag in the end. Oh, while I think of it, any chance we can leave early? There's a band we want to see in Romford at the Pig and Kettle. Starts at 10 o'clock, but it doesn't matter if we miss the first bit. It'll be a warm-up group. We need to leave at the latest 9:45. Shirley felt exhausted, as she always did when dealing with Debbie and Annie. They were so full of enthusiasm and energy. She'd been like that once, but now she was mostly tired and depressed. Perhaps that was why Jamie had... She pushed the hurtful thoughts to the back of her mind. No problem. Long as we can start now and everyone has learnt their lines, we should zip through it and you can enjoy the rest of your night. Oh, cheers, Shirley. I'll quickly nip to the loo before we start. Knew I shouldn't have had that vodka and cranberry before I came out. Annie headed towards the door. Oh, here comes trouble. She held open the door for Sean. Okay, get the show on the road. Demetrius has arrived. Sean entered, flinging his arms wide and shimmying his hips. He was slim, prematurely balding young man, clean-shaven, wearing designer ripped jeans and a black short T-shirt. He smelled strongly of a mixture of cigarettes and aftershave. Shut up, Sean. You still owe me £1 from 2 rehearsals back when I paid for your tea. So cough up. I'll give you 5 minutes while I go to the loo. The love of my life, the beautiful Annie. I would give you my last penny. Sean hugged a reluctant Annie. She shook Sean off. I don't want your last penny. I want your last £1. She disappeared through the door, letting it slam shut. Shirley found herself drifting again. She'd been the love of Jamie's life at one time. He looked so handsome the first time she saw him at her cousin's wedding. He'd been wearing a kilt and she was attracted to his rough manly looks, his beard and athletic figure. He was a dream come true, but dreams can be dashed. She brought herself back to the present. Okay, everyone, let's get started. Act 1, Scene 1, no scripts, I will prompt. She looked round. Oh, Jordan phoned me this morning. Dependable Jordan, with his almost puppy-like devotion to her. She was fond of him. He was clumsy and shy, with little self-confidence, and she felt a sisterly love for him. She'd given him the part of Oberon and knew he would devote himself to the part. His arthritis is playing up and he's going to have to give it a miss tonight. Sean, can you read in for him? He's only in the first and last scenes. Jason and Patrick aren't here. Anyone know where they are? Does anyone ever know where Jason and Patrick are? They are a law unto themselves, Nina quipped. Oh, Jason's probably working late and Patrick sometimes gives him a lift. I was talking to Patrick early. He's definitely coming, Jess added. We'll have to start without them or we won't get through it. I'll read in their parts until they arrive. So I repeat, no scripts, impositions, Act 1, Scene 1. Mumblings and exaggerated coughs implied that most of the class hadn't learnt their lines. Shirley chose to ignore it as they mounted the stage to get into positions for the court scene. Annie returned from the toilets and joined the others. Shirley knew Patrick and Jason were not needed yet, so she wouldn't have to worry about reading their lines. She opened her notebook, removed her pen lid and put on her reading glasses. Her mind wandered back to Jamie. How had the argument started? Was it the smell of perfume on his clothes or the hotel bill receipt for a double room she'd found in his trouser pocket? He was angry with her for going through his things, but she'd only wanted to empty the pockets for washing them. She knew it was guilt. Had she always known he was unfaithful? Probably. She just chose to deny it. Can't I just hold on to my script today? I promise I'll learn it all by next week. Shirley came back to the present. What did you say, Debbie? Can I keep my script? It's been so busy at home, I haven't had a moment for myself. Shirley knew Debbie had a disabled child, but she couldn't allow her to keep her script when the others all had to abandon theirs. I'm sorry, Debbie. I'll prompt you. I'm sure you'll be fine. Debbie sighed and disappeared backstage. Okay, when you're ready. She was having difficulty gaining any enthusiasm for the rehearsal. She couldn't get the picture of Jamie's face out of her mind, with his inability to explain his nights away. He'd used all the standard excuses up. Car breaking, down, heavy traffic, late night office get-togethers. She knew it was fabrication. The hall doors flung open again. In rushed a tall, fresh-faced, boarding young man clad in denim with a baseball cap turned back to front on his head. So sorry, Shirley. I took an extra shift, needed the money. Patrick's followed on. Think he needed the little boys' room. Remind me to ask you about tickets in the break. Need about 10 in total for Friday night performance. Well done. I wish everyone would sell the amount of tickets you do. Could you get behind the scenes? We're about to start. Oh, no scripts, please. Did you hear you say no scripts? Patrick had crept up behind them. Well, that'll be a problem for you then, Jason. He banged Jason on the back. Come on, mate. Relinquish your script or die. Shut up, Patrick. We don't all have photographic memory. I was only taking it to run through my lines before I went on. The two of them retreated behind the scenes. They made a comical sight. Jason relatively short in stature, Patrick unusually tall and slim with cropped black hair. At last, Shirley was alone in the hall with all the cast behind the set. She turned her phone to silent, aware it was informing her she had a message. The first two actors entered and began. The words became a drone. She must concentrate. She watched the action for about 10 minutes. She knew there was only one way she would be able to put her fears of what the message might say behind her. Would it be the end of 40 years of marriage? How would she tell her daughters, her grandchildren? A cold feeling gripped her stomach. It was no good. She'd have to check. She tapped in her password and went to messages. Yes, it was from Jamie. Happy birthday. That's the first one. And the rest to collect.
Right, so we have a couple of questions.
Oh,
We can take some more. The first one is from Alison. How easy or otherwise?
hold on, can I just put it on chat, then I can see them as well? There we are, yeah.
do you-
How easy or otherwise do you find putting a collection together? Oh, where's that? There's Alison. I've never done it before, and I sent off quite a few of the episodes to Jill for CafeLit. And it wasn't until I kept thinking I could do another one and another one, because it started off with just that scene. That was it. That was the finish of this whole story. The fact that she so thought her marriage was coming to an end, and she was so angry with him for forgetting, and she thought it was going to be another message, and it wasn't. It was just happy birthday, and that was it. But then I started to think, well, actually, I quite like to carry that on. How easy? I don't know. Is any writing easy? I don't know. No. But I enjoyed it, though. I enjoyed it. And I think the further you get into it with episodes, then the easier it gets, because it sort of seems to come together. Does that answer it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I suppose it's a slightly different different way of writing in a way, isn't it? You know that. No,
yes.
Yeah, you sort of think, right, but Charles Dickens wrote like that.
Yes, he did. He started off by writing for a newspaper, didn't he?
Especially Pickwick Papers, so you're in good company, I think.
Yeah.
And there's a question from Dawn.
Yeah.
Who is your favourite character in the book?
Actually, that's a very good question, actually, because when I was thinking if I'd ever carry on over a second act of this book, I did think of two characters, and they do fascinate me, and they are based on two very good friends of mine who know, and they were in drama with me for years. And that is the characters of Debbie and Annie. They're the girls that come in the little black numbers, and they're both, although if I could, I would have done an East End accent. They're both East End girls, really down to earth, both clever, bright girls, love London, always in London. And in the second book, they carry that on. I carry it on with them. And if there's any characters that I would separate and make just stories out of, is them. Because I think there's a lot of stories in there, ready for the making. But yes, so it's a couple. It would definitely be Debbie and Annie. Yeah.
Any other questions? Who do you like least in your book?
Oh gosh, who do I like least? Nina, because of what she did to her family, and how it ended up as well, how she continued that. She was very callous, it was quite cruel what she did, in a sense, to her husband and her family. And you know, obviously marriages do break down. It was the way she did it. And so I don't like Nina. I hasten to say that is not based on any true story at all, by the way. I quickly add. Yeah, yes, but so yes, it would be Nina.
Good. Right. Any more questions? You can either put your hand up or use the little slide at the bottom to do that, if you want to, or put it in the chat if
Oh, here we go from Colin.
All right.
How easy was it to write a nasty character? Wow. Okay, yeah. Yeah. I find it quite hard to write nastiness over and above, not comic, but more chatty, more comical type things. I've only written one thing that was to do with a ghostly thing that went into, it happened in Essex. And even that was quite hard. So yes, I think I do find it hard. I could never see me being very good at being a crime writer of a really nasty crime, or anything like that, because I don't think my mind works that way. I find it difficult to think of really nasty things. I'm not saying I don't, and I'm not making out I'm really good and pure and nice, because I'm not. But to actually think of really nasty plots, I think I'd find that very, very hard. So Nina was in my confines, that was fine. And the sort of not very nice things that happened in Charitable Thoughts were all resolved. So the characters became nice again. But to write somebody who was out and out horrendous, I've never done. And I think I would probably find that quite hard.
Good. Any more questions? Any more? Right, well, I'll just spend a couple of minutes telling you about CafeLit. I can see names of people I know who I've already written for CafeLit, but some of you might not know much about it. It's an online magazine. Publish one story every day, and I tend to schedule them about a week in advance, so I always know that I've got enough stories. Every day, usually early afternoon, I look to see how many stories have been submitted and pick the one I like the most. If there are several that I like, I think we published a short one yesterday, so I'll go for a longer one today. Or we published a dark one yesterday, so I'll go for a funny one today. Or, oh, this looks like a new writer, so might have a go at publishing that one. Or, oh, there's Alison again, or there's Dawn again, or there's Hannah again. Oh, Diana's popped in. I haven't published them for a while. Yes, we'll have one from them now. And so it goes. For example, today I had the choice of none. There are no new ones. So I tend to keep about 30 in hand. And if I haven't had a new one come in, I did reject one today because it was too long. Nobody here, so nobody needs to worry. But it was just too long. I rejected one the other day because it's got too many song lyrics in it, which you shouldn't really have at all. You can probably get away with a line or two, but it's got far too many. On a day like that, I go back and I'll publish the one I've had for the longest. But most days I get 7 or 8 to choose from. So if your story's picked, it's usually chosen from 7 or 8. It's just very, very fluky the way it works. I'll often pick a bunch of stories, and then some days there won't be any. And this serial idea, I actually think it was Dawn who started it off with the what came to be known as the Puzzlewade Chronicles. And that's this similar idea. These stories were sort of self-contained in a way, but they linked together. So it didn't matter if there was a gap between them. You got the characters that you got into, and anybody that's open to anybody. Then what we do every year is we pick the best of the stories we've got. We put them into a volume between 30,000 and 65,000 words roughly. Usually works out all right. We've done various things. We've sometimes had the writers from the year before pick them. We did something a bit different this year. And we actually produced a little book that then attracts royalties, and we sell copies and so on. But things work quite nicely, and we've got two more serials in the making. So another question coming in for Janet: is there an author that you feel may have influenced you?
Oh, right, yes. Is there an author? There are loads of authors I absolutely adore, but obviously people like Margaret Atwood, etc., and Ian McEwan, and loads of people I can think of that I read and I read and I read. But I've always loved comedy, but comedy is the hardest thing to write. And one person I always thought nailed it was Sue Townsend. I did a few of her plays, Bizarre and Rubbish, and plays like that. I actually did that with drama groups, not with pupils, although I've used them as monologues, etc. I love the way she writes. I just was so upset when she died. Not everybody likes the way she writes. I do. I thought The Queen and I was just so funny. I read all the Adrian Moles at the time, way back, and my kids did as well. So if I was to say a style, then I would be far more of a Sue Townsend probably than I would be Victoria Hislop, or you know, I've just read one by Monique Raffy, which is excellent, and I so admire people like that, but I can't put myself on that platform. I'm nearer, I suppose, to somebody that writes in a slightly comic way, like Sue Townsend. I haven't got her ability or her power of her humour at all, but I think maybe in the back of my head here that it has. Yeah. If that answers it. Elv? Oh, can't see Elv. She's hiding. Look, she's hiding behind her. She's put herself in the dark.
Yeah, a shadow.
A shadow. We can see the shadow. I can see the hand. I can see the hand.
Right, are there any more questions? We have one more challenge for you, and that is, I was going to get you to push in the chat, but we're almost out of time, so I'm going to suggest those of you who like writing that this might be a prompt for a bit of creative writing, and I would encourage you to send it to CafeLit and mention that this was the prompt. I will send all of this information in an email to you, probably later this evening. But the prompt is: what is the most dramatic thing that happened to you when you were at school? And I will give you my for example. My for example is when Sue, Sheila and I got locked in the art store cupboard in the art room. David Timmins and Alex Jones walked off with the key And we had to yell through the window and get the caretaker's attention, and the caretaker was a grumpy old man called Jim. And it just wrote itself into quite a nice story, that. So, dramatic incident at school, ham it up a bit, and it can make a really good cafe. I mean, if there's a series of them, I'll publish them as a series on CafeLit. And just a little line, this was the creative writing prompt at Janet's launch. Now, as I said, I'll email it all out to you, so don't worry about remembering details. Also, I will let you know how you can buy the book if you haven't got it already. And what I ask you to do now is ask you all to unmute so that you can give Janet a really good round of applause.
Oh. Oh. Oh, thank you very much. Can I just say thank you for coming? I know it's a pain. I know that Zooms are so prolific at the moment. They seem to dominate us. So it's been really, really kind of you all to come. Some gave apologies. Some people are ill. Some people just can't do it, etc., etc. The best excuse was my cousin, who'd forgotten it was Maundy Thursday. And she's a Catholic and she lives in Ireland now, and she'd forgotten she was presenting the sermon at about. I thought that was
it's an excuse and a half, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Well,
and Janet, you read so well.
Yeah.
Listen to you, and yeah.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, yeah, thank you. And thank you for listening. I didn't know that was too long, that chapter, but never mind. I ploughed on. Hoping that you all had stayed awake to the end of it and read it. I didn't see anybody, but there are some people blacked out. So
yes.
I think that's probably why Elle blacked herself out. She's just had a snooze.
The pyjama crew, yeah. Pyjama crew.
Oh yes, well you're in your pajamas. Yes, that's very true. Yeah. Oh, but thanks again. And if you do buy the book, no pressure, but I do hope you enjoy it. It's very quick. It's very short. And I hope you like the characters, because hopefully there's going to be another of them. And yeah, and when you write your books and everything, or you do book launches, I'll be there.
Oh
dear. Okay, thanks a lot. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Nice to see you, Sarah.
Did you hear that? Elle was saying nice to see you.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Me? Oh, hello, Elle. There's 1,000 Sarahs in
Hi,
the world.
Sarah.
Hello, Elle. Hi, Elle.
She's being a shadow puppet at the moment, Sarah. Don't worry.
Put some lights on, woman. What are you doing?
Bed.
Is it because you like stuff? Oh, there she is. There she is.
Right. Night. Thanks, Janet.
Bye. Thanks, Jen.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.
See you. Bye. Funny, it's everybody dashes off, don't they? Ping, ping, ping.
Pictures get bigger as people go.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. At the moment, Christine, you're absolutely massive now, because we've got.
Yeah, I know. I'm just going to go have my dinner. Yeah.
Bottom of your screen, where it says leave.
It's covered over with something. It's gone now.
That's it. She's gone. Yeah. Now we've got